Tonight, a high-stakes trade showdown, political maneuvering as Pierre Poilievre eyes a return to Parliament, and a city divided. Are they street art or just a public nuisance? From Montreal, I'm Eddie Tekalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald, and this is episode 44 of Night Talk Canada. So let's get down to business here and welcome you, and we welcome your participation as well tonight. Let us know your thoughts on any or all of our topics. Post your comment, and we will share and respond to as many as possible. Now, let's dive in. With U.S. President Trump's August 1st deadline for a new trade deal with Canada just hours away, what's at stake for us? And how could this affect everyday Canadians? Well, the White House has announced a deal last week with Japan that, among other things, saw a 15% tariff levied on most Japanese goods. Over the weekend, a deal with the European Union was announced. And let's have a look at that deal. Let's get into that a little bit. And we'll come over here and we will go to here. So here it is at a glance. "15% tariff imposed on most EU imports versus threatened 30% tariff. 0 for 0. No tariffs on aircraft, parts, semiconductors, select generic drugs, and agricultural goods. $750 billion energy deal. The EU is to buy U.S. energy products over 3 years, specifically natural gas. $600 billion investment. Business communities, companies, what have you, committed to invest capital in the United States by 2028, $600 billion of investment. Now, we'll get into that one in a few minutes. 50% metals tariffs remain on steel, aluminum, copper, and that's all pending quota talks. And the critics say asymmetrical favors U.S., may raise consumer prices in Europe. So, let's find out exactly what the Europeans are thinking on this, and let's have a chat with our correspondent in Europe. Well, as the clock ticks down to the August 1st trade deadline for Canada and the U.S., the EU has already reached some sort of an agreement with President Trump on trade, and here to talk about that is our European contributor, Christian Falk. Christian, this deal was announced on Saturday. It seemed to me that President Trump, as usual, did most of the talking and bragging about what a great deal it was. What is the overall reaction in the last couple of days since that deal was announced?
Well, mixed feelings from European country leaders. We had negative response from France. They said it was more like they expressed the concern that this deal is not a real deal, but more or less a disaster for the European Union. On the other hand side, like German Chancellor commented on it, Friedrich Merz, it is more like a pragmatic approach in order to not escalate the trade conflict between the European Union and the US. I mean, we had 30% on the table, which would be actually really disastrous for the European economy. So mixed feelings from all sides. But yeah, here we are, 15% fixed, which will obviously bring tens of billions of dollars into U.S. Pockets for the next coming years.
Is there any discussion in the aftermath of that announcement on the weekend that, in fact, it's not really a deal, a signed agreement, everything is hard and fast, that in fact this is more of a framework for negotiations?
Well, it seems more or less that now Europe accepted this deal. We were really afraid of in the end, not afraid, but it showed like really who has still the power in the hands. And Trump wanted the deal. Now he has the deal. We avoided the 30% tax as of 1st of August. Now looking on 15%, which is favorable in that sense. But all over, we have all mixed feelings about this trade deal. However, we know that the Trump administration is a couple of years in. And when you look at those numbers or the deal, there's no real timeline on how long this deal is going to last.
Does the deal require individual countries to approve it before the union can say it is a done deal?
Basically, now it's a done deal. That's why we have a lot of voices against this, a lot of comments from that side. Like people are really not that happy and all over Europe. But as said, like it is like it's a rational, like Chancellor Merz said, a rational approach, and we want to keep on going with the US. And it's also from the European Union point of view, we wanted to show that there's still unity between the US and the European Union, which was somehow fragile when you saw the development over the last couple of months, looking into the tensions between the European Union, the NATO, and specifically the US. Yeah.
Aside from only having to deal with 15% in tariffs, do you feel that there's any kind of a significant financial gain for the EU in the long run here, or is it just kind of a flat line business as usual approach?
Well, I mean, the 15% is only one-sided, so it will definitely benefit the US economy. I mean, we will have to reduce our prices when importing or exporting our goods to the US, to the USA. And that's actually not a deal, because we did not get anything out of it. It was just we just wanted to tell them, listen, we know there is a trade deficit between the US and the European Union. We want to make it back. And especially, and was reportedly told by some of the European leaders, showing to the world that the US and the European Union are not enemies, but there's a lot of unity and a strong partnership behind. From that point of perspective, yes, the European Union will lose money, so will also the US with those tariffs. But the more important picture all over was to show unity to the rest of the world, specifically in direction Russia and China.
All right. And are you watching closely as to what's going to happen between Canada and the US as to how that deal may turn out, if in fact we do have a deal by Friday?
Well, yeah, but we are already, it was back in June, I think June 25th, where there was already an agreement between the European Union and Canada in terms of closer collaboration in military, but also in trade. So whatever happens between Canada and the US, our arms are wide open to welcome Canada. And what we heard over the last days, there were some polls also talking to Europe, to Canadian citizens, how they feel about joining the European Union. And surprisingly, a big number said that they were really positive surprise, or were saying, yes, we want that. I think there were around 44% of the Canadian population is happy to discuss that idea. So I think no matter what happens between the US and Canada in the coming days, there will be still trade between both countries because they're really intertwined. But we're here to trade with Canada and with open arms, It's clear that everyone wants to distance themselves a little bit from the US. We cannot do it 100%, but here we are. And there will be new trade flows between all kind of countries. Yeah.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper the other day in a panel discussion here in Canada suggested that he always approached negotiations so that there was a win-win on both sides, that each side came out with something that they had gone in looking for, and it was better to be able to announce that kind of a deal. I sense by what you're saying and what you're hearing from, in general conversation, that in fact, you're not really feeling like this was a win-win. It was more of a win for the US, and the European Union kind of went along with it. Is that a fair assumption?
It is a fair assumption, but still, we also have to admit somehow that there is a big trade deficit between the European Union and the US. And we could have lost much bigger because our trade surplus, like export surplus to the US, is so much higher than the US. I think our exports going into 600 billion to the US, and the other way around is 400. So there is definitely a trade deficit. And at some stage, this would come into the discussion. So we're just happy that the 30% are not imposed. Let's put it like that.
All right. Christian Falk, thank you so much for giving us this overview from the European viewpoint on your new trade deal with the U.S. And as we're discussing this evening, we're in the countdown mode to our deadline of August the 1st. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, when you listen to what Christian was saying, and I start going through some other information here. Again, to me, it sounds more like somewhat of a framework of a deal, because the president of the European Union said the other day that, oh yes, the money that they've agreed upon to invest is going to be mainly private sector investment, and there's no real control over how much the private sector will be willing to invest in the U.S. Right. The Japanese trade deal with this $500 billion investment over a number of years, turns out, when you get right into the nitty-gritty of the deal, most of that money would be a loan to the United States from Japan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But that's not the way the leader of the U.S. presented it in his comments. Now, I'm sensing there's a gray area here as far as whether the European Union as a group, whether this is now cut and dry. Because when some research I did, it's suggesting that if there is some opposition from some of the member countries, that it may require some kind of a vote. And certainly right off the bat, France was out of the gate almost right as soon as that news conference ended, saying, no, we're not happy with that. And now Germany has joined the fray, and I haven't heard of any other players coming out yet. But I'm sure there will be a few other countries feeling the same way, because the way Christian was talking, and it verifies some other things I've read, that no one is really totally happy with this deal at all from the European side. But it's something they felt they had to do. So, the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago started trying to tone down any expectations on our part by saying that a deal without some tariffs probably, that's going to be where we're going to land. But again, he's saying still, I want the best deal in the best interests of Canada. So I'm not sure. Like it seems that we're going, or that he's landing, or Trump is landing deals, and the average is the 15%. But the sectoral tariffs, like on steel and aluminum, remain at what they are.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, I was watching very closely the activity over in Europe with Trump going off to Scotland and whatnot. Um, it's very interesting, if you look at, I didn't do it, but I mean, you go to the Webster dictionary, the English language, for example, right? And you look up the word deal. It does say it requires two parties to agree on something. It doesn't strike me just by Ursula von der Leyen, yeah, the EU chair. It didn't, you look at her body language, you look at her facial expressions, and it certainly didn't look like that there was a deal that was tabled. I think it seemed to be more of a publicity push for President Trump to tell people that, yeah, look, I've got Europe in my back pocket. We've got ourselves a wonderful deal with Europe, and everybody's happy about it. Far from it. You looked at her body language. Immediately, you had Macron saying, "Whoa, hang on a second here," and then you have Germany that's basically raising their hand as well. And I think you're right, Gary, in saying that yes, this is something that's a framework, and before anything becomes an actual binding agreement on paper, call it a contract or whatever you want to call it, um, it needs ratification. It's no different than you know. 10 provinces and 3 territories in Canada being involved with the process of any sort of a deal that's going to be made between Canada and the United States. There is going to be some form of ratification on a provincial level. Okay, now you're looking at ratification on a country level being held together by the Constitution that's been written up for the EU. Um, so Trump might be, flipping cartwheels and telling the entire American public that he's got a great deal. I really don't see it. And based on what Christian was saying, the if this was not a framework, which it is, and it's actually a done deal where you're going to have that 15%. He is right. I can't see how Europe walks away saying they got anything out of this thing, especially with the deficit. So Gary, I don't know. I I know El Presidente feels like he's got a major victory in his back pocket. And look, the man is desperate for anything. I mean, nothing happened in 90 days the way he said it was supposed to be. So he's looking for any kind of victory if he can find it, and if he can pump up any minor accomplishment and make it sound like a great deal, the art of the deal. He's certainly going to do that because his ties to the media, the state-controlled media in the United States, they're going to push this thing till kingdom come. That wow, you know what, President Trump and Europe and so on and so forth, which is far, far, far from the truth until I personally hear something from the EU saying we now have an agreement on paper and we are moving forward. I don't know what Mr. Trump, President Trump, El Presidente, is pushing, besides just the regular propaganda that he's been pushing since day one. Um, and you know what? Just based on that, what's going to happen on the 1st of August, this upcoming Friday, I believe, correct?
Right.
Anything that happens on Friday, if we don't get an extra 2 weeks, by the way, anything that happens on Friday is going to be a huge victory for El Presidente. Whether it's good for Canada, bad for Canada, good for the United States, bad for the United States, he's going to come out and saying, I've got Canada in my back pocket. We got to deal with Canada, when in fact we probably don't have one. So I think Prime Minister Carney and his discussions with our provincial leaders last week, I'm sure they're already preparing for what's going to happen after the 1st of August, after Trump declares some kind of a victory. Do you do the shine bomb from Mexico and just placate him and move on with business and start freewheeling trade deals with other countries bypassing the United States? Maybe that's what they need to do. Maybe that's what they're doing. But certainly, you know what? I don't believe that. I haven't seen anything on hardcore paper with the European Union, this is a full blown agreement. One thing I did learn from that interview between President Trump and Ursula von der Leyen. One thing's for sure, and I learned it it's a very firm statement by President Trump. He does not like windmills.
Yes.
That was made perfectly clear for about 30 to 35% of the entire interview. So, look, time will tell what's going to happen between Europe and the United States. Time will tell what's going to happen to the rest of the world. We are very eager to see what happens on Friday. Are we going to get the extra 2 weeks? Is President Trump going to declare victory even though there was no deal? And you know what? And you've said it many times, Gary, whether we have something on paper or whether Europe has something on paper with the United States of America while Trump is at the helm means absolutely nothing. Kuzma got taken, thrown into the air, shot with an M16 rifle, and basically declared by President Trump that was a horrible deal, even though he's the one who signed it in his first term. So, you know what? As Premier Ford said, I don't trust Trump. And if a provincial minister with that sort of emphasis and respectability within the country of Canada says that he doesn't trust Trump, why would anybody else in the world trust him when he can easily throw a deal by the wayside with absolutely no regard for the legality of anything? So time will tell.
Yeah, and I'm just having a quick look at the ratification of this as far as the EU is concerned, and it's still a bit of a gray area as I'm looking at whether full legal ratification will require European Parliament plus all 27 national legislatures to vote in favor of it. Because if there's some kind of mixed reaction to it or opposition, let's put it that way. Right now we just have reaction, but mixed opposite, some kind of opposition to it, it looks like it may have to go. And then God only knows what happens from there. But certainly, I think the one thing that we can expect coming Friday, if in fact a deal is announced or an agreement is announced, and that is that it's probably going to carry at least a tariff rate of 15% on pretty much everything that he hasn't touched so far. So I think that's where it's going. But we'll have to wait and see, and maybe we'll have the gonads enough to just get up and say, we're done playing this game with you. When you come to your senses and want to actually negotiate in good faith, then call us. In the meantime, We're going out and seeking other markets anyway, which we're going to be doing whether we have an agreement or not. We're going out and seeking other markets, and we'll just carry on as it is. We'll suffer the pain until we start getting things rolling on other sectors. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
do you
to
think
roll.
You think he's sensing that he called us nasty a couple times already. Those Canadians are nasty for a variety of reasons.
Right.
He's declared us nasty when we come to negotiating. Do you think he's sensing that that our government is being much tougher than he anticipated, and he's just preparing for the fact that if he doesn't get what he wants, that he is going to blame us, that we're just too difficult to deal with to save face? I don't know. He said that a few times, so that's
Yep.
what I'm thinking.
There's no doubt that he is setting it up that way, and even if he does have the opportunity to announce some kind of an agreement on Friday or the day after or tomorrow even at some point, he's still going to somewhere along the way take his shots at us as far as being nasty, because apparently we are much tougher negotiators at the moment than even the EU was. The EU, all of a sudden, just bang, this comes out of nowhere. It's like they just rolled over and played dead.
Maybe they're just like Christian said. Maybe they're just placating him right now until they actually get the heart of what they actually desire out of any sort of a trade deal with the United States.
Could
I
be.
don't know. Scheinbaum
Yeah.
did that in Mexico. I mean,
Yeah.
months ago. Basically tell them that you won and still get what you want out of the deal, and tell them that he's great. I don't know. Maybe she's playing. Maybe they're playing their cards with this. Who knows?
Yeah, that's for sure. We have a few comments to catch up on here. Eddie, let's go to this one. Whoa, it's a
Oh,
long one.
nice.
Yeah, from Greg. Let's hope your listeners unanimously agree that on Friday we will walk away from Trump, as he'll be a thorn in our side until his term is up. Stephen Harper's view is bang on. Diversify now, as we'll never return to the way we were. And with Trump, a deal is never a deal. Let's face it,
There you go.
we have wasted too much time already, albeit we had to show we are together, but it has us diversifying. Let's walk after Friday. Greg,
Nicely put.
you and I are so much on the same page with that at the moment. So much on the same page. And out to the West Coast we go with Joe. Trade, deal. More like an ultimatum.
Didn't he
And
actually say that for countries that don't bow to the king, basically we'll tell them what they're gonna be paying, and that's the end of that. I mean, even though the country doesn't pay for anything, which you'll never say, but yeah, this is exactly his style. We're just gonna write you a letter, and that's what the deal is. That's
which
not a
is
deal. Webster Dictionary says you need two people.
yeah, which and yeah, he's already sent out letters, so
Yeah,
we're on to that. And Greg just popped back with brilliance.
brilliant. Yeah.
So
Well, well, one thing that's I really want to hear your comments about, Gary, is Stephen Harper's comments this week.
speaking of Stephen Harper, I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
up Stephen Harper, because I went in and I found his the panel discussion. It wasn't even a panel discussion. It was actually him sitting down. It was like a fireside chat at this conference out west. And he had a couple of really interesting comments, and I took the time to grab a couple of them. And why don't we just put those up now, and we can roll along with it after. You ready?
My advice was yes. On the economy, we've got to kind of get something short-term worked out with the Trump administration, but this really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets. That's why, that's why we did sign the trade deals all around the world, Europe, Asia, Pacific, the Americas. And Canada has been, to be blunt, this is nothing against the U.S. The reality is, independent of the current disputes, Canada has been, to use business term, and I'm in the investment business now, we have been grossly overweight the United States as a country, and there is no reason for that. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous. And the other thing, in terms of security, my advice to the government is, yes, absolutely, spend more on defense. We should have been doing it all along. But while we spend a lot more in defense, while the border is a shared responsibility, let's make sure we spend a lot more on defense so that we can be independently responsible for our own land, seas, and skies, independent of the United States. And I'm just going to tell you right now, one political role I still have, I chair the Global Federation of Conservative Parties, and I can tell you that this is the advice every allied capital is getting from everybody like me that they talk to. And this is not ideal, but I just think it's a reality. The cat's out of the bag. You can't, or toothpaste is out of the tube, whatever you want to call it. You can't put it back. I think it's unfortunate. I think in the long term, this direction will weaken the free world more than it will help it, and it will, I think, ultimately weaken the United States as well. So I think it's unfortunate, but that is the reality of the situation that we have to deal with.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I found the comments really very, very interesting in that respect. You know, there were a lot of things I didn't agree on with Stephen Harper. There were a lot of things I did. And I think probably his legacy in a lot of ways is how he brought Canada through the economic crisis back
Right.
in 2008, 2009.
Hmm.
And, I mean, our banking system was solid. Uh, we survived that. We were actually looked upon really as a powerhouse. You know,
To come through
um,
that, yeah, yeah.
yeah, the way we did. So Manel says, I never agreed with him before, but I do now. Yeah.
You know what? I mean, like you were saying, it was a fireside conversation up in Saskatchewan, someplace. I'm not exactly sure where. Um, and it's, just by seeing this for the second or third time now, and I relate back to something you told me a few days ago, Gary. And it's so true. I mean, here you have somebody who's he's not a radical conservative. He's just a conservative minded leader, and he was our prime minister for 2 terms, I believe, 8 years. Um, and when you have the present prime minister of Canada, who just happens to be part of the Liberal Party, reach out to someone who has expertise, who has previous experience as a prime minister, who's well respected in the finance community and as economic advisor. To reach out to somebody that a lot of people would consider, well, this is, he's a conservative, he's the enemy. You know what? This is called great leadership, and we talked about this. Okay, great leadership from a political perspective, where one will reach out to people across the floor and take the expertise to be able to get to the best decision possible. This is true in politics, but you know what? This is the same thing in business. As a
Mm-hmm.
business person, knowledge is gold. You bring in every bit of expertise you possibly can to be able to discuss, dissect, and then make decisions based on the information provided to you, regardless from where it comes from. This is good leadership. And you know what? And that's what resonated with me. This is how governments should work, Gary. You're bang on when you said that. This is the way government should work: bipartisan cooperation and disagreement, and you move forward. So right there, I think that what Prime Minister Carney did, the information and response that former Prime Minister Harper gave publicly, and I'm sure there was a lot of back end discussion that hasn't made public. Both of these guys are going to do what's best for the country. And the one thing I can say is from previous administrations in Canada, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre could learn from this exercise, because those two did absolutely nothing but headbutt and all with all the theatrics and whatever else in Parliament, as opposed to getting the job done and working together as opposition and move forward in a bipartisan way. They just never demonstrated that. So what we just saw, Gary, I think is just fabulous for our country, and I really hope to see that what Mr. Harper might have provided as guidance is actually being used in the confines of Carney's office and in the discussions with the premiers. And we'll see what kind of deal these guys can eke out with the United States of America, if anything. And you know what? Just like you were saying, and Greg was saying, thank you very much, guys. We're turning the station to another channel, and let us know when you want to talk. So I was very, very pleased to hear what Mr. Harper had to say.
And we have another comment from Joe. I look towards Friday with trepidation. I truly believe that Trump's ultimate goal is our resources and our sovereignty. He cannot be trusted. along with Lutnick, who continues with economic threats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No question in my mind, Joe, at all, that one of Trump's goals here, and has been, and he basically stated it very early on in the early days of his new term, and that was he was going to bring Canada to its knees. No, I'm not going to invade. I'll just use economic power. And that's what he's been doing. We tend to forget that comment that he made back in January, I think it was, that's what he was going to do. And why? Because, as you say, Joe, he wants our resources, our critical minerals, our water, the Northwest Passage. He wants it all. We're a gold mine to them, or to him anyway. Yeah. But we have the resources that regardless of how much he protested, and he's really backed off on this particular protest of, we don't need Canada, we don't need anything from Canada. Remember those comments on more than one occasion in the spring? And now you don't hear that from him. But there's no doubt in my mind that in his sick little mind that he still has a desire to take us over, and in doing so, get full, unhindered access to the rich resources that we have here. No doubt in my mind at all.
Yeah.
And let's see. Monel says, and don't forget he needs a war so that he doesn't have to have elections, martial law, and shut it down. Yeah, that's a whole other story as far as some of what's going on internally with him and that country in general. Wow. Now, we mentioned, you mentioned Pierre Poilievre a few minutes ago in your conversation. Up next, we have Pierre Poilievre making a bid to get back into, guess where? The House of Commons, in a by-election next month. First, are you happy with your current internet provider? If not, why torture yourself with slow speeds and or throttling? Check eBox. They offer fiber where available at competitive prices. Eddie and I have both switched to eBox after suffering slowdowns and dropouts at the hands of a cable provider. Right, Eddie?
Absolutely.
You can check out the affiliate link below and use one of the two codes provided for a special offer.
Thanks for that, Gary. And Gary, the date is set, and so are the protest candidates. Can Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre secure a seat and silence a growing number of critics with the Conservative movement? Or, Gary, is this Alberta by-election about more than just one man? I wonder.
Well, a couple of things related to this, Eddie, and one is the by-election is featuring the longest ballot, I think, in Canadian history.
217 bodies on there.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And of course, that's all being promoted by a protest group. And they want to, they're pushing for voting reform. And this is not the first time they've done it, but they've really hit their goal this time. They did it in two Liberal by-elections in Toronto, St. Paul, and then here in Verdun. And then they hit Poilievre's Ottawa riding. And there were, I think, 90 candidates on that ballot. It was 6 feet long.
Yeah.
And of course, some of the Conservatives and Poilievre himself, I think, were saying that, well, that's one of the reasons contributing to the loss. And I think 5,000 vote loss, there were a few other reasons that were more focused on Poilievre himself. But that's a whole other discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that. And then last night there was a candidates debate with 10 candidates, including Polyev, taking part. Now, I believe they were invited by the organizers, the business community.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we have a couple of clips from the debate. I'll warn you that the lighting was not great for camera coverage, but I managed to brighten it a little bit, but it's still, it wasn't a great production overall. But we do have a couple of clips we can play from that. And the first one is Pierre Polyev just giving his kind of introduction and speech. And if you notice, he just went a few seconds over his time limit, and they were quick to cut the mic. Here we go.
Thank you to the great Damien Couric, who has given me the chance to speak for the people of Canada and for Battle River Crowfoot. But most of all, thank you to Battle River Crowfoot, the region that feeds, powers, and protects this country. Feeds through the great ranchers and farmers, powers through the ingenious energy workers, and protects through the brave soldiers at CFB Wainwright. Makes me proud to be an Albertan. Now, in fairness, I'm from Calgary, born and raised, and Calgary's a little ways from Camrose, but there's a lot of shared values across this province and across this country. And my Alberta values taught me about faith, family, and freedom, hard work, helping your neighbors, and those values guided me to fight for the values of this region when I was leader of the party and member of parliament over a couple of decades, that I forced the Liberal government to get rid of their carbon tax. But which is a local issue in rural communities, forced the debate on developing our resources, slowing down out of control immigration, cracking down on drugs and crime. And now I want to take the local issues and provide national leadership to fight against the electric vehicle mandate, because driving a pickup truck is a local issue in the communities across this region. To fight for law-abiding firearms owners, to fight for farmers, and to expand our military. These are local issues that require national leadership, and it would be a privilege to provide.
So that was his introduction. He did take part in the question and answer session that followed. It was interesting to watch him at times. His body language when some of the others were speaking and responding to questions, I found somewhat condescending personally. Others may not have really noticed it one way or the other or really cared about it, but there were just a few little things, certain ways, faces he made, or turned his head, those kinds of things that it's almost like running through his mind. What am I doing here, kind of thing. So now, one of his
kind of like it's in the bag. What am I wasting my time here? I certainly hope that's not the case, but.
Well, one of his biggest challengers and one of the first people to put their name on the ballot, so to speak, was an independent, Bonnie Critchley. Now, Bonnie has conservative roots, but is far from happy with the Conservatives, and in particular, Polly.
Myself, I am running as an independent. I don't have a party, because I firmly believe that party politics would be damaging the Canadian politiscape. We are not American. We are not a two-party system. And while I may have run as a centrist with conservative leanings, I firmly believe that the Conservative Party of Canada has lost its way, and I fully intend on standing up for my neighbors. When our previous guy sells us out to let a guy from Ottawa come in, that is not right. I firmly believe that we need somebody here who understands our local issues, who understands the issues of right to repair, who understands that we do need proper oil sands development. Yes, I saw you there. I'm well aware where you are. We do need proper oil sands development. We need proper investment towards our farmers, and we need the federal government to wake up and pay attention outside the western border of Ontario.
Later in the evening, she was responding to a question, and it's a clip that CTV News has been playing all day, where she really tore a strip off Poilievre, just bang on directly. Like it was something else to watch, actually. But I think she may be getting some traction. I sense there are some conservatives who are not happy with Poilievre and haven't been, and that's really starting to bubble up more. It's going to be interesting, too, if he is successful, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be, because it's considered one of the safest conservative ridings in the country. But if for some reason he's not successful, or he meets limited success and does end up back in Ottawa on the inside, it'll be interesting to see what tact the caucus takes, because there are rumblings of discontent within the caucus in Poilievre's leadership,
Well,
and
it's
the way
interesting
that
you say
the campaign was run.
Yeah, because I mean, I was just going to ask you, Gary. I mean, typically when a senior member of a party is running for a by-election or something important of relevance, normally you have the caucus stepping in front of microphones, making sure their presence is in a camera as much as possible. Basically, patting Poilievre on the back and providing their utmost support in terms of moving forward. And in this particular case, let's get elected Pierre. He's the right guy. I really haven't heard a whole hell of a lot from senior officials of the Conservative Party on the media. Am I missing something here, or have you seen something? I just thought there'd be a lot more.
No, just I've just heard, picked up on rumblings of they're not happy. And as far as the party officials, well, at least at the moment, they're backing Poilievre and they're backing his campaign manager. So you've got that. But then don't forget, he has the leadership review coming up in January. And again, right. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that leadership review. If the long blue knives come out and they start drawing blood. So it's interesting in that respect. Now, to me, and I've said it before, and I'll say it one more time, and then I promise not to raise it again between now and August 18th. And that is, he blew a 25-point lead in the polls. He lost his seat by 5,000 votes. Like, really? So, if he does not poll at least 82% of the vote in this riding, which the MP who stepped down did, to me, he should then dig down deep and find the sense to resign as leader, because the message is being sent. You don't need the leadership review. At that point, just resign, which he should have done on election night. Yeah. And I'll never change my mind on that. But that's how I see it. And from Joe, the last thing we need right now is PP back in the House. We don't need that arrogant simpleton and his abrasive nature creating more dissent. Look up smarmy in the dictionary. you'll see a picture of Pierre.
I'll have to look that word up. I've never heard of it.
So yeah, really, there are a number of things happening in this by-election, and what a way to heat up a summer on the political scene instead of just the barbecue circuit. You have the leader of a party trying to get back into the House of Commons in a supposedly safe conservative seat. Again, though, if he doesn't match what the MP polled, then I just don't think he should try to carry on. And then you've got this crazy group, and this is the one thing I'll agree with Poilievre on, that changes need to be made to the Elections Act to prevent this kind of foolishness. Now, I saw a report somewhere that indicated that a couple of the candidates that were on the list didn't even live in that area, didn't live in I forget what it was now. They weren't residents of the country. That's what it was.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know how true that is, and I don't know if their names are still on the ballot after that was raised. But what Elections Canada has done, because this ballot would be 7 feet long. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with a 7-foot long ballot going in behind the little cardboard screens and trying to find, your candidate that you want to vote for?
I'm trying to picture my dad having to unravel that ballot and put an X someplace. It's just not going to happen.
So what Elections Canada is doing is they're printing up a new ballot, and you're going to write in the name of the candidate you're voting for and the party. Now, I heard somebody raise the question today, what happens if somebody misspells the name? Is that going to be a vote that's going to be rejected? A ballot that's going to be rejected?
Yeah, I thought it said. I thought I saw something that said if there is a slight misspelling, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to throw the ballot away, right?
Right, and that's probably why they want the party along with it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so that it's easier to identify. But the other side of it is, I'm sure they're going to have the list of names somehow on this when you walk behind the screen, so that it's in front of you, so you can run kind of through it and just copy down the name and spell it correctly. I'm sure that there will be something like that in place, because you take a lot of people, and especially seniors, who may have some eye issues, trying to figure this out and going in and doing their thing. So anyway, it's a by-election that's like no other by-election in a lot of ways in a long time, and especially at the federal level. And True. It's going to be like, as much as I don't want to see August roll by quickly, because we're rolling out of summer at that point, I can't wait for the 18th and to see how it all shakes out overall. No question in my mind, even if he wins and he goes back to Ottawa and he has his seat in the House of Commons and can start firing questions at Carney, he still has a lot of issues. And I don't think right now that the Conservative Party is a united party. Mm-hmm. And I think it could be a good old-fashioned conservative bloodbath at the leadership review, unless a few things turn around. Anyway, and that'll be something to look forward to in January, on those cold January days and nights.
Well, maybe we won't have to wait for January. The 18th might be a surprising by-election where I think the chances are very slim that he doesn't win. But like you were saying here, he's got to win. He's got to win big, not just by a couple of points here and there. He's got to. It's got to be a commanding win, and we'll see what happens in a few weeks.
Yep. And I will say that I have picked up on a couple of comments along the way of his door knocking tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some people in this riding, some people feel he's coming off somewhat condescending.
Yeah, Gary, if I might ask, what's the population of the voter constituency of Battle River Crowfoot?
Crowfoot.
Battle,
We had that somewhere here. I'd have to dig back through, but
yeah.
I'll do that, and we'll see if I can't get it to you before we end the stream tonight. I'll post it on our community post on the Night Talk YouTube site. Okay. All right. So let's we've put Polyev to bed, I think, for the night. So coming
A little
up,
bit.
yeah, the infamous Montreal traffic cones of shame or cones of street art. But first, are you in content creation? You want to get into doing your thing, or you're tired of the Zoom meetings and the team meetings that are just blah blah. Well, you can really sharpen things up using Ecamm. Ecamm is a Mac-based app that allows you to do a lot of things as far as setting up a video production is concerned. You can work on it yourself. There are a lot of options available that you can buy. There are even some free options available on the web as well. But you can really, if you do nothing else, you can use it for your Zoom and Teams meetings and be switching back and forth between things and look like a pro. Well, everybody on the other end, all of the other people in those meetings are like, oh, how's he doing that? Or how's she doing that? That looks pretty cool. In any event, Ecamm is what we use for Night Talk. And I've been using it for 6 years now, and it's gone through a lot of changes and updates over those 6 years. So it's really easy to use and put things together, and it's a lot of fun. So there is an affiliate link in the description below, and you can sign up for a free trial through that link and try it out for yourself and see what you think of it. All right. Oh, Manel says that the population of the riding in Alberta is 107,979 as of 2021. Okay, thank you, Manel, for that.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of vote. That's a lot of votership right there.
Yep.
I thought it'd be a lot smaller than that. All right, so this is becoming very interesting, Gary.
Even more so now, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So let's move along and have some fun. Because we did the other day. Yeah. From striking murals to endless orange construction cones, Montreal's streets are alive with various forms of culture. And yes, I would argue that the cones have become a form of street art and part of culture. However, the constant array of the cones lining street after street under construction in this city and around the suburban areas drawn mainly negative comments from drivers and other residents tonight. Are they street art or a maddening nuisance? Well, earlier this week, Eddie and I went in search of cone displays, and we were surprised, weren't we, Eddie?
Absolutely.
Why were we surprised, Eddie?
Well, Gary, you know what? Normally you and I would take a walk, or we take a walk with our wives, and as soon as you turn a corner, you'll see a row of orange street cones. And it's gotten to a point where, they run out of orange street cones. They've been used up so much that now they're getting into purple color, pink color, sometimes yellow. And you were guaranteed to find a street cone within a few walking steps. Well, as you nicely said, you and I went for a walk last time, Gary, and we had a hard time finding the regular deluge of street cone of traffic cones. Our orange friends were nowhere to be found, and we were very, very, very surprised by that and
Devastated.
devastated. Yeah, that's exactly the correct wording. It was a hot day. We were sweating. We thought we'd be rewarded for our efforts, but it just wasn't the way we expected it to be. And you know what, Gary? As much as we, as citizens of Montreal, we want to just bitch and complain about the deluge of the street cones and nobody's doing anything about it. Like you said, maybe somebody is starting to do something about it. Hence the minimizing the amount of traffic cones that are out there, especially during a construction holiday. So
And that's what it was.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to that in a minute. Now, Eddie and I had a little bit of fun because we didn't find what we were looking for, but we did find this. Well, Eddie, it's been quite the afternoon in search of our famous Montreal street art cones, traffic cones. We're down to the skinny cones, the ones that have been put on a diet. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they heard our promo from our stream last week, but for some reason, even over on the corner across the street, we were here about 20 minutes ago, there were cones, the big cones, the street cones, the public street art. We come back around to get a picture of them. They're gone. We're left with these guys who have been on a diet. Montreal, come on. Like, what's going on? We're famous for the street art. It's public art. I don't know what we're going to do with it.
I don't know either, Gary.
Yeah, you know what? That was the craziest thing. I mean, we saw the street art in front of us. We kind of took a detour for a few blocks to look at, hey, can we find something better? And we came back and they were gone. Gary, the city saw us spying on what they were not doing. Somebody spotted us and removed it. I agree with you, man. That was the craziest thing.
It was just bizarre. And I was totally disappointed because I thought we would be able just to fill the entire show with street cones. And, people have dressed them up, grab one off the street, put on the front lawn at Halloween, dressed it up as some kind of creature.
Right.
They put Christmas tree ornaments on them. They've stuck Christmas trees in the top of them, decorated Christmas trees at Christmas time. There's been so many things. You'll be walking down the street in some of the older sections with the triplexes and that, and you look up and there'll be a cone on a balcony.
Yeah.
And there might be a plant growing out of it.
It was really surprising, Gary. I mean, I remember last year, walking down Old Montreal or just parts of Montreal during the construction holiday, and the tourist areas were just laden with cones. They just didn't remove them. So I think you're right, Gary. I think that the city itself is really, really committing itself to removing cones, especially from the tourist areas or the heavy traffic areas where there are tourists, to at least remove them if they're not being used. And, this is construction holiday in Quebec for the final 2 weeks of July. And I think they've done a brilliant job removing these things if they weren't going to be used. I mean, traditionally, they would lay these things down in June and maybe they'd crack ground in September just in preparation. But it seems, at least for the construction holiday, they cracked down on that. So that's good news, don't you think?
Well, it is, and the one of the things the city did commit to doing in the last year, especially after complaints last year about the cones, was that they would have better communication between departments and start keeping track of these things in a much better fashion. And it seems like they have, there was one street in Chinatown that the cones were lined up on the grass area just beyond the curb, but not in the street like they normally would have been.
Normally would be, yeah.
Yeah. So they were lined up neatly and kind of tucked out of the way, so people could still, maneuver up and down the street, park there, whatever. And I'm thinking, okay. Now, Monel just posted here. Let's bring this up. I saw a report recently that said 22% of all downtown cones serve no purpose. Yes, and that report was out. And that was, I think, between that and the cones that sat at, sorry about that. The cones that sat at the entrance, one of the entrances to one of the tunnels, which would be a provincial responsibility, but a set of cones, or a whack of them, sat in the same spot for 16 years.
Yeah.
Now, and you brought up a good point the other day. Like, okay, if these cones are out there, a lot of them are rented from a couple of different companies. So they're sitting there and they're doing nothing other than being street art. So that's the only purpose they're serving. And the city's paying for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it never even dawned on me at the time. All I've ever thought of was, I wished I had bought stock in the companies that make these things and supplied them to the city and the province of Quebec. And then the other part of it is, when they lower the level of the Lachine Canal for the winter, how many traffic cones do we see at the bottom
That's
of the
true.
canal?
Yeah. It's traffic cone fishing.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know as a driver, and when I was driving, when we first moved to Montreal, and not knowing my way around, and at one point, just here in the neighborhood, ending up taking a detour that took me to a street that was already under construction and closed, and all of us were trying to turn around on a narrow street to get back the other way, go down a one-way street the wrong way to get out of that mess. And there were cones everywhere. But now, no. So obviously they are cleaning up their act, and I just got to a point where I just found it humorous, and to see how how artistic people would get taking something that really annoyed the hell out of them as a driver. And even when you're walking and you're doing the maze, especially right now in Old Port, it's like a maze you're going through to get around the construction. But in some respects, it just made us unique. And how unique did it make us? Well, we found one tourist from Florida, and I asked him point blank, "Are you here to see our street art, our cones?"
I have not heard about the cones in Montreal, about the street art, but I have heard it from other people who said there have been a lot of cones around. It's like, what the heck's going on? No, we came to see Montreal and the greatness of Montreal and how wonderful it is and how beautiful it is. So,
yeah. Nice guy. Nice bunch of guys.
Yep, very much so. He was there with, there was one of them was from Montreal, and when
one was from Granby.
When I asked about the street cones, he just broke out laughing. Yeah, and the other was from Granby, and then our visitor from Florida.
Right, Gary, I got a question for you.
Yes,
I mean we're very proud of our street art here in Montreal, right? You know that.
Yes.
Do you have any street art in St. John, New Brunswick, back home?
And
how much of it?
Not on the scale that we have here by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Although in the city center over the last couple of years, they've been doing some infrastructure work, road work. And I chuckle at the complaints. And there's a bridge that crosses the harbor that has been under rehabilitation for 16 years. And
16 years.
Yeah, it's a long story. It's a long story, Eddie. But yeah, one side of the bridge would be shut down, and they'd work on it from April through to December, and then open it up for the winter, and then April again back down, and they'd be on the other. Companies went bankrupt. They had to come in and redo the work, and it's just been
sounds
one
like
thing.
our Mercier Bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a total make work project, and they keep saying, I've heard in the last 4 years we've been here, it's going to be finished next year. Yeah, right. But anyway, yeah. So there are some cones in St. John, but you're more likely to see seagulls wandering around the streets, especially in the city center. And they're like, we are trying to figure out ways to get rid of the cones here. Well, people are trying to figure out ways to get rid of the seagulls from the city center. And they've tried everything, including expensive horns and things like that. It's it's been quite an issue. And we have a pet name for the seagulls, but I won't bore you with that here. So
you can tell me later.
Yeah, street art. I really kind of miss the cones, but I think we're going to have some in the neighborhood again very shortly. I think there's some more work to be done just around the corner, and it looks like they were gearing up for that.
Yeah, they were just gearing up.
Yep. And so that'll be started probably sometime in August and finish sometime late November, I would think. It's a small stretch of street to finish off. So.
Well, Gary, if we're lucky, I mean, you and I both live on Ottawa Street here in Montreal. Maybe they're going to dig it up for the 4th time in 2 years. very shortly. September's coming around, right?
Yeah, and we'll have cones.
We'll have cones, yes. Lots of them.
Lots of cones. Anyway, it was fun getting out and getting around, and the two of us spending the afternoon together. Bright, sunny day, hot, really hot, and seeing some of the people and a lot of tourists, and especially in through the Old Port area, of course. So it was great to see that activity in the city. But alas, the cones were really nowhere to be found, and I was totally disappointed. I came home a broken person. My cultural activity gone.
We were so depressed about the exercise that we had to crack open a couple of cold ones, huh?
Well, we needed nourishment after that.
Yes, we did.
Something to cool down, and
I felt pretty parched.
So did I, actually. It was really hot. So with that, it's time to call it a wrap. From trade brinkmanship to political brinkmanship and a little Montreal street flavor in between, we have covered the issues hitting close to home. Until next week, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop asking the questions that matter. And remember, if you're watching a replay, to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Night Talk Canada returns in 7 days. I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night,
everybody.